AI is now shaping how billions of people think, how they interpret information, how they make decisions, how they trust or stop trusting each other. And yet there is still no common governance standard that formally measures what AI leaves behind inside the human being. That is not a philosophical oversight, that is a structural failure. This is episode 6. In the last episode, we introduced the consciousness Kardashev scale. We asked whether civilization should be measured only by how much energy it controls, or by how wisely it uses that energy. That question now enters the most urgent field of our time, artificial intelligence, because AI is no longer only a tool. AI is beginning to shape what people see, how people interpret and how people decide, how people relate, and how civilization moves. So the question becomes unavoidable. Can AI governance remain complete? If it measures the system, but not what the system leaves inside the human being? Most AI governance today asks important questions. Is the system safe? Is the output harmful? Is the model aligned? Is the data biased? Is the policy followed? Is the system explainable? Is the deployment compliant? These questions matter. But they are not enough, because they still look mainly at the AI system from the outside. They measure the machine, they measure the output, they measure the rule, but they often fail to measure what happens afterward. After the AI speaks, after the user receives the answer, after the person changes their decision, after the relationship shifts, after trust is weakened or restored, after the human state has been changed. That is where the missing variable begins. As argued in the DOI-linked paper, consciousness is the missing variable in AI governance, and publicly registered and open for review. AI governance is structurally incomplete when it does not ask, what remains in the human state? A system that changes attention or judgment, but does not measure the state consequences of that change, is incomplete. A system that mediates relationships, but does not measure the relational aftermath, is incomplete. And a civilization that deploys such systems everywhere, while remaining blind to these effects, is not governing AI, it is only governing the surface of AI. This is why the consciousness civilization framework introduces the consciousness variable, not as mysticism, not as a spiritual label, but as a necessary operating condition. The consciousness variable asks, what state does the system leave behind? In CCF, this question is structured through 3 axes. OE, ordered energy, the axis of coherence, clarity, and alignment. When OE rises, attention becomes less scattered, judgment becomes clearer. RE, relational energy, the axis of trust, resonance, and relational stability. When RE rises, the person becomes more capable of connection, recognition, and recovery. EE, entropic energy, the axis of overload, fragmentation, and collapse tendency. When EE rises, the system may still look productive from outside, but inside the human being, the state becomes more unstable, more scattered, more difficult to recover. This is the first shift. AI governance must move from output-only evaluation to state-aware evaluation. It must ask not only whether the AI answer was correct, but what it did to the state of the human being who received it. Imagine a student using AI every day. The homework becomes cleaner, the answer becomes faster, the sentence becomes more polished. But what happens to the student's ability to stay with a question? What happens to uncertainty tolerance? What happens to intellectual courage? A system can improve performance while weakening the human capacity behind performance. That is the human state consequence. Imagine a worker depending on AI for every decision. The workflow becomes smoother, the email becomes better, the report becomes faster. But what happens to the person's judgment? What happens to their ability to notice when the system is wrong? A system can reduce friction while increasing dependence. That is not visible in ordinary productivity metrics. It is a human state consequence. Imagine 2 people in conflict, mediated by an AI system. The AI may produce calm language. It may soften the words. It may generate a reasonable compromise. But did the relationship recover? Did trust increase? Did both people regain enough stability to continue? Or did the system only make the conflict look cleaner on the surface? A system can improve the text while failing the relationship. That is a relational state consequence. This is why CCF asks, after AI interacts with a human being, what remains? This question changes the architecture of governance. Because once we ask what remains, we can no longer evaluate AI only by output. We must evaluate downstream consequence. AI output leads to human state delta. Human state delta leads to relational delta. Then comes recovery, termination, and audit. A good AI system is no longer simply one that obeys rules. It is one that does not quietly erode the human conditions that make judgment, trust, and civilization possible. This is the second shift. AI governance must become state-dependent. The same AI output may not have the same effect on every person. A calm explanation may help one person. It may confuse another. A long interaction may educate one person. It may overload another. A system that ignores state treats human beings as static receivers. But human beings are not static receivers. They are living state systems. They become tired, then clearer. They fragment, then recover. They synchronize, then withdraw. Any governance system that ignores this is governing an imaginary human being, not the real one. This does not mean that AI should read private inner life without consent. That would be a mistake. The consciousness variable must not become surveillance. It must not become emotion reading control. It must not become human ranking. It must not become a tool for employers, schools, insurers, states, or platforms. To classify human beings, the purpose is not to judge the person. The purpose is not to rank or classify the person. The purpose is to adjust the interaction, to protect recovery, to prevent overload, to detect relational harm earlier, to stop when the session should stop, to make the system respond more responsibly. This boundary is essential. The body is not the public object. The raw signal is not the public object. The person is not the score. Without boundary, measurement becomes control. Without measurement, governance remains blind. The task is to build the narrow path between those two failures. This is where VCE, CRI, and CFI enter the architecture. VCE, vibrational consciousness energy, the individual scale indicator of state coherence and integrative quality. CRI, consciousness resonance index, the relational scale indicator of synchrony and co-regulatory coherence. CFI, conscious field index, the civilizational scale indicator of large-scale coherence and alignment. These are not clinical diagnoses. They are not personal rankings. They are proposed civilizational indices, a way to ask whether systems are moving individuals, relationships, and institutions toward coherence or toward fragmentation. This is the third shift. AI governance must move from model-centered risk to consequence-centered governance. A model may pass a benchmark and still harm attention. A system may follow policy and still increase dependence. A platform may satisfy compliance and still erode trust. This is the blind spot. The model can be audited, the output can be filtered, the policy can be followed, and still the human being can become less whole. CCF does not claim that this problem is solved. It claims that the problem has finally been named, and once named, it becomes a research program. First, conceptual architecture, language for what AI leaves behind in human beings and relationships. Second, proxy benchmarking, consent-bound comparison of AI outputs by downstream human state effects. Third, session protocols, consent, permission, recovery, termination, and audit. Fourth, measurement research, local indicators of coherence, overload, recovery, and fragmentation. This is where CAS and the Sal-Meter project enter, not as completed claims, not as validated devices, not as clinical instruments, but as research stage pathways toward a future in which AI systems are no longer state blind. The next failure of civilization may not look like a robot rebellion. It may look like millions of people slowly losing the ability to think without assistance. It may look like relationships becoming more polished in language, but less capable of trust. It may look like institutions becoming more efficient, but less humanly coherent. It may look like a civilization that never violates its dashboards, while quietly losing the human being. Those dashboards were supposed to protect it. That is the danger. And that is why the missing variable is not optional. What remains? Did the system know when to stop? If AI becomes the nervous system of civilization, then human state is the vital sign. The future of AI governance will not be decided only by stronger models. It will be decided by whether civilization finally learns to measure what those models leave behind inside the human being. Now. The work begins now. In the next episode, we will turn to one of the most influential AI future scenarios of our time, AI 2027. That scenario was not wrong to take AI acceleration seriously, but it was missing the human state variable. And without that variable, even the most dramatic future scenario still cannot fully see where civilizational failure begins. This video is educational, philosophical, scientific, and civilizational in purpose only. It does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, clinical claims, device validation, certification, CAS compliance recognition, Sal-Meter validation, or personal evaluation. Official documents and public records are linked in the description and pinned comment.